What's up? This is Questlove of the legendary Roots Crew, Late Night with Jimmy Fallon. Showing love to one of my favorite projects ever, one of my favorite bands ever. In 1985, this is all I listen to. It's one of the most perfect albums ever made. The family is beyond amazing to me. I mean, I just consider it an honor just to know them. And I'm so glad that they have reformed as fDeluxe and will continue to make smart, funky, amazing music for the future and beyond. Beyond, and beyond.
Before we get started here, do me a favor. Wherever you got this podcast, make sure you subscribe, give us a rating, and if you have time and you like what you're hearing, make sure you write a review. It really helps us get the word out so we can have a lot more people coming to the party. Hey everybody, I'm St. Paul Peterson. Prince gave me that nickname, and I've been lucky enough to tour with people like the Steve Miller Band, Kenny Loggins, Peter Frampton, Donny Osmond, to name a few. And when I'm not playing music, I love to run. And this is a podcast about how we stay healthy on the road, physically, mentally, and with our families. Welcome to Music on the Run. Hey everybody, St. Paul here. Welcome to episode 22 of Music on the Run. We're already starting here. And we're, of course, we're broadcasting from the Peterson family basement once again. Lots of rehearsals and hangs have been done or accomplished, shall we say, in this basement. My next guests have been together for exactly 35 years. We're having an anniversary right now. The original record is one of the favorite records of so many different people like Questlove, D'Angelo, Damn Funk, and it comes out of Paisley Park Records. They had a top 10 R&B hit called Screams of Passion. Of course, they had the classic funk, High Fashion, and Mutiny, and they were the first band to record Nothing Compares to You. Please welcome my friends Suzanne Melvoin, Eric Leeds, Jellybean Johnson, the family, also known as fDeluxe. What's going on, my family? I miss you guys.
Hey, big bro.
How are you? So, Suze, you're in LA, yeah?
Aren't you? Aren't you part of that band? Your intro, because it's our band.
I know. I'm part of the band, yeah, but I'm interviewing.
You were part of the band. You weren't part of the band.
Yeah.
Now you're part of the band again.
I didn't leave. I got fired this time, right?
Make up your mind.
Make up your mind, buddy.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's Susanna, how's LA? I know you guys have got fires out there and COVID, and you've got kids going to college, and
I've got it all kind of happening at once. It's like I'm 10 minutes from a 30,000 acre raging fire.
Man,
So it's so bad. The weather has been, nothing under 102 for 2 weeks. Some days it was 109, 111. And
no thanks.
All the fires that are close by, so the air is toxic and weird. And then, two kids, one of them doing remote learning and having to navigate that. And the other one actually is taking some time this year, a gap year from college and doing all of her artwork and stuff, which is fine. But we've been hunkering down, and it's been a really, really weird time. Not to bring it down, but with all of it, and then having this pandemic and losing my mom to it, and then having to sort of feel your way through, and also try and be creative and try and do what you can while you're home. It's really it's been a journey, no doubt.
Pete, how are you handling staying at home? You're the road dog here.
Yeah.
Are you surviving? Are you go crawling out of your skin?
It's been crazy, man. The only thing getting me through this is prayer and exercise, so I do like 3-hour bike rides every day and just try to navigate, there's some things I play, a gig every once in a while and stuff, but it's been hard, man. You know me, baby bro, I'm out every night. I was out every night, and those days are different.
Yeah.
So.
Right. Yeah. What about you, Eric? Is this a change for you or not?
Not much at all. It gives me an excuse not to have to spend time with anybody, which I don't like doing.
So, Eric.
Oh, I set him up for that.
Perfect cover for me. No.
Oh my God.
No.
35 years. How can that be?
Wow, it went. We've been through it, y'all.
Well, wait, I got to show the people. There's the record right above my head there. And a few singles. And of course, I've got down the line that you can't see. We've got fDeluxe represented as well. So it's a hell of a history that we have. I thought it would be very cool for us to reminisce a little bit. Be fun for our fans, be fun for new fans with Music on the Run. Just to kind of take a little look back at what we did 35 years ago and leading up to now, of course. Susanna, let me start with you.
Okay.
How are you approached? Oh, who's the kitty, by the way?
I know. There's my. Yeah.
Let me ask the kitty a question.
Go ahead.
How are you approached about joining the family?
I'll try and figure a short way of saying this, but when the Time disbanded, and Jelly Bean, this is your direct experience with you, yours. Paul, you did it as well. You guys were in the Time, and then that this period in like early '85, and all these fantastic musicians, and Prince felt at that point, what can I do with these great players? And there were all of these sort of essential players that he would, like Eric and myself, who were in the peripheral. He just sort of thought everyone was. Let me put it. It's a little confusing because I have the image in my head of what had happened, but everyone was in this one particular place rehearsing. If you remember, Jelly Bean, like that big rehearsal space.
The big rehearsal space, Flying Cloud off Flying Cloud Road. Yeah.
Right. You guys were on one end of the building, and we were on the other. And then it was like Morris left. Morris is gone.
Yeah.
Jesse's gone. Everybody's like, they want out. No one wants to be there. Really contentious. But there were all of these other players that were there, and we were like, we all want to play. And Prince felt like, I think at the time, he felt there, a bit of a responsibility to keep the train moving. And then also it was like this great opportunity to use these. I mean, there was Paul, there was Bean, and then there was Eric and myself, and I was involved with him at the time as well.
Right.
Let's put this project, do this thing. And he wanted to call it like, this is our extended family. And it felt right to call it the family and put this band together to not resurrect, but sort of reimagine this musical vision he had. And if it wasn't going to be the Time, it could be these great players and musicians. And it was kind of a brilliant move on his part. We all wanted to work. We all wanted to be creative. And I think that it was, I remember him saying, specifically saying, well, let's put a band together. Let's call it the family. I think he was like, let's put it together. He said, you up for it? I'm like, yeah, I'm up for it.
Well, you had a different thing. Bean and I were in the thick of the whole disbanding of the Time, but you were coming at it from a different angle because you were involved with them. How did I'm just curious of how he just felt like he wanted to be a caretaker and keep the ball rolling. So you saw that side of him, and we didn't see the pre-planning portion of that. We just saw the announcement. He did, right? I mean, we were there for the reveal, and that's it. We didn't hear what was going on in his mind. Yeah.
Right. Well, there's personality, so you guys got a different personality, and I'm sure that there was a bit of it too. You didn't want to seem as though there was anything vulnerable about the situation. God forbid. The Time is breaking up his, beloved Time. Like this was, his childhood band that he got to really, go deep with, a part of himself, and that was disbanding, and all of his brothers were leaving,
right?
And you weren't going to see that vulnerable side of him. he was going to just put his big boy pants on if that was, not that he would ever see it that way, but he was like, let's, there's all these great musicians. We're going to use that, and we're going to, reimagine it.
And Eric, how did you get notified? I know your brother Alan was in the fold, obviously, but did he just call you on the phone and say, "Hey"?
Yeah, that was basically it. I was living in Atlanta, not really doing too much. I had left Pittsburgh, where my career had been based since the beginning, really. And Alan called and just said he's putting this new band together, and he wants a saxophone in it. And my response was, I don't think so.
Of course,
I mean, what's the music going to be? Look, you have to understand something. I was not into Prince,
right?
Other than a few of his songs that I may have heard and liked, but I had one album of his, didn't much care for it, other than maybe one song. There was nothing about the idea of it that had any interest to me, basically, other than the fact that finally I realized, something? I need a gig. And I had no illusions or expectations about what it was going to be. I came up to Minneapolis basically to do a recording session. And for me, that might have been the complete sum total of it. Alan had told me that Alan had played for Prince some recordings of mine, probably my band in Pittsburgh or whatever. And Prince was sufficiently impressed to say, let's bring him up here to do the session. But to whatever degree Prince heard something that he thought might be of value, that didn't guarantee that once we got in the studio that anything was going to really work. I could have gone in there. He might have said to me, Eric, thank you so much for coming. I don't think this is what I'm looking for. Or by the same token, I was there to just do a recording session for the guy, do it and get paid. And at the end of that, if it wasn't something that I particularly was interested in continuing, I would have gone back to Atlanta. That would have been that.
Right.
Fortunately, we both enjoyed the afternoon. But you have to understand, my involvement was completely incremental, because once I did that session, I stuck around to hang out with Alan, and mainly because I had family here. My mother was from St. Paul, and I had aunts and uncles and cousins that lived here that I hadn't seen in a long time. So I came up here more to see them than,
right.
It was like, I'm going to come up here. They're going to pay me to come up so I can spend some time with my family. And, I'm going to do a recording session with this guy, and I'll get paid for it. And
wow.
Yeah. That was basically the idea. I had no expectations, illusions. And also I did have enough understanding from Alan's involvement that this was a guy that can change his mind like we change underwear.
Right, of course.
So whatever degree, and this was just as Purple Rain was coming out. So, I mean, he had bigger fish to fry, And I think Alan had already told me that the likelihood if this project was actually going to come to fruition, that it could be as much of a year before it was ever going to be released. And I'm thinking, well, that's a year that he can completely lose interest in this and just move on. So I had, I wasn't going to, I was just going to see where this went.
Right.
And it went.
So you came in as a session musician at first.
Yeah.
As you said, incrementally.
Yeah.
Now, by the way, we have a person on the line. Now, don't go anywhere. I'm speaking to the person who's going to come in as a guest. I've hidden where he is and who he is from you guys. It's going to be a surprise, but just that person, please hang on. Bean, so you and I are sitting in this circle. This is what I remember. In the warehouse. Do you remember us sitting around when everybody had left and Prince came in and he said, he told us about the family. Do you recall that at all?
Kind of. I know he was impressed with, you being an 18-year-old kid and you had a nice voice. He had heard you singing on the piano or something. And it was something about you that he liked. So.
Not for long, though.
Maybe it's that plaid jacket you're wearing. Maybe that's what it is.
Maybe that's what it was.
Hey, I put a suit on sort of for you. And wait, Bean, be nice. I'm wearing you. Do you see that?
Yeah, I see that.
Okay, all right. I'm representing you here. Oh, so here's what I remember. You and I sitting in the warehouse in Eden Prairie, sitting around in a circle, and Prince said, okay, everybody left. Morris is gone. Chessie's gone.
Yeah.
What do you guys want to do? I'm going to form a new band, and I'm paraphrasing and trying to, go into my brain to recall this. But as I remember it, he said, I got a new band, and I want you to be the singer in it. And he pointed at me, and whomever didn't want to do it, that's cool. Go your own way.
Yeah.
And I think Jerry Hubbard was in that meeting, and he ended up going with Jesse.
Yeah.
And then, and that was the first time I was notified about that.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound? Do you remember any of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Now I'm going to bring in a couple of guests because I want to move into the recording process of the family. Davide, you want to let these folks in? And I don't know if you'll recognize them. Here comes one, Mr. Brent Fisher.
Hey there.
Son of Claire Fisher, who did all the great string arrangements on the family record and many more.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Brent.
How are you?
And let's get, we got one more guy coming in, except for, boy, that's the best you ever looked, David. David Z.
It's my ceiling look.
Got two other people to say.
Wow.
Boy, your plastic surgeon, we need to talk to your plastic surgeon. You look just like a ceiling fan.
Yeah, I really tried to do that. It was perfect.
Oh, there you go.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Oh, my God, David Rifkin.
Hey, Eric.
Right. What's up, man? Long time.
I know. It's been a hell of a long time.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on, you guys. This is unbelievable. Well, we were just hashing out, how the family came to be and what we were recalling about it. And I thought it'd be fun to go into the recording process of that. Let me start with you, David. You had worked with Prince prior to this, correct?
Oh, yeah. I did the demos that got him signed to Warner Brothers. I did Purple Rain. I did Kiss. Well, that was before this, after this. But, I've done a lot of stuff with him.
So, was this one of the first times where he said, I've got this group, I've written these songs, I've recorded these songs, and then he said, why don't you take it from here? He was letting go of the reins, so to speak, at least in my opinion he was. I'm sure you guys may have a different view on that, but you took the reins from, I remember, of course, for doing my vocals.
Yeah. Well, I've been involved in a lot of different ways with Prince for a long time. I recorded and edited a lot of the Time records, the first ones, and as I said, I did his demos. I recorded Purple Rain in the truck. So I've been involved on and off with him. I never really worked for him. I was just working with him. He'd call me for, whatever reason. I never answered to his paychecks, which was good. I didn't have to be under any kind of control. It was great. And
David, what do you recall about recording that record?
The family record actually came about one day. He said, I'm going to include everybody's relative, because it was Alan Leeds' brother, it was my brother, Bobby was on it. You were on it because, you're one of our family. So it was a relative, and Wendy's sister, Suzanne, everybody was related. I think Jerome was a cousin to Terry Lewis, right?
Yeah.
Brother. It's brother.
Hey, Susanna. Everybody was related. They were a brother or a cousin or a sister, and that's why he wanted to call it the family, because it was the family, literally. I think the title would have been incest. Well, we won't talk about that.
That was a perfect time to talk about that.
And Joe, Everyone's with somebody to somebody.
Yeah.
And everybody was somebody.
Everybody, somebody to someone.
Well, he had a song like that too. Want to be somebody.
So I remember you, David, coming in. Here's what I remember. I remember you calling me on the phone. Somebody would be sending me work tapes at home, and most of the record was done, musically speaking.
He and shit. I'm sorry. I gotta plug in my phone here. He and Susan Rogers had done all the tracking, and I'm gonna have to put this down for 1 second. He and Susan Rogers had done the tracking. I did some of it, and the instrumentals parts of it were done. He did his lead vocals, and he wanted me to get you guys to sing exactly what he was singing.
Right.
So, anyway, he wanted it exactly. I mean,
right.
Yeah, he did.
to the syllable, and he knew I could do that. What the hell happened here? Are you see me still?
Yeah, we got
We
you.
can see you, but we lost Jelly Bean. There he is. Bean's back.
Okay, there we go.
Anyway, I was in charge of putting your vocals exactly the way they should be,
Right.
both of you, Susanna and Paul, and it was a very belaboring. It was very hard to do because he's a great singer and his phrasing was spot on. So we had to imitate his style of speech, and his phrases and his endings of words were very important. We spent a lot of time on the very ends of words because the way they twist up and down are extremely important in melody. And I remember the first day of Paul coming in, and we started on the first song, and I remember a couple hours you were talking to Julie, your wife, and said, "Yeah, I'll be done in a couple hours. I'll get dinner." And I went, "I don't think so."
No.
I had no idea, man.
He's not done yet.
No, I'm still not done.
I did. I had an idea because it was very, exacting work. And Jellybean was sitting right next to me the whole time. And we were actually it was a different challenge because it wasn't really a recording studio. It was a warehouse.
Right.
And we had no speakers, no control room. We had a monitor on headphones, and that's the way we did the whole record. The drums were put farther in the room, and the singers had no real vocal space. They had to stand out. We had to move things around so it didn't sound like you were in a warehouse.
Right.
Except for my vocal was the only one that was done at Sunset Sound, right?
We did some of yours at Sunset Sound, yes. But you were in the warehouse too, right?
I don't think I did any.
Oh, we did yours at Sunset Sound. That's how far back it is. I don't hardly remember.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he would come in and or we'd play it back for him, and he'd go, "No, you got to do it like this," and we'd have to repeat and punch in. Those were tape days, so there was no smooth editing. It was punching in on tape, and we had to punch in words and syllables and endings, and it was very hard to do.
Yeah, because there was a little bit of a delay, right? You couldn't just start singing right after you punch in. You had to wait maybe a quarter of a second.
I always made him sing the line before, so it didn't sound like there was an interruption or that you started up right away.
Right.
If you sang the line before, I could punch anywhere, and it would, hopefully overlap.
Right.
I think I witnessed about 5 or 10 minutes of that.
And that was enough for you, I bet.
Oh yeah, it was like, I think you guys got this completely under control.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm going back to Georgia.
Yeah.
David, was Prince breathing down your neck at that point? about the performances? Was Prince breathing down your neck to get it perfect, or was he leaving you alone?
He was leaving us alone.
I remember maybe 2 or 3 sessions he came in just to kind of hang out.
Yeah.
And he was letting you do the whole thing.
Yeah,
That's
he
trust.
gave us reins on that, and that was, same thing with Claire Fisher. I went out and, first of all, I had never recorded orchestra before, so I didn't know what I was doing. I depended on Arnie Frager and Brent to get that part of it, but I was a witness. It was great, but I was also the supervisor, and I had to.
Do you remember which studio?
It was a studio in Glendale, I think.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Oh, yeah.
Studio. We had
With
I think we had a 70.
What's that?
The 70-piece orchestra. That was the Glendale Studios. I can't remember that studio. Your dad used it often. Right?
Yeah, that was Arnie Frager had the studio. I don't know what the name of it was,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
it was basically a good studio for orchestra. So
Because I remember we did a lot of stuff at O. Henry in Burbank and Martin Sound in Alhambra. There were also some sessions at Capitol in Hollywood, and
I think O. Henry rings a bell, and that might have been
yeah.
it. That might have been it. I thought it was Glendale.
I thought it was Glendale too. I'm pretty sure it was.
It could be. Yeah, it could be, because I know we did some stuff at studios in Glendale. I just can't, 35 years ago, sorry, I can't remember the names.
Right.
Yeah.
I know.
And that's why we're doing this, so we can attempt to set the record straight and remember what we can now. Yeah. Jelly Bean, what do you remember about those sessions? And David touched on it a little bit. I remember you being right by his side when we were doing those vocals. David would be, "You're sharp there, Paul," and you'd be like, "Yep, you're sharp, Paulie. Yep." I remember that like crazy.
Yeah, he had to make.
But
he had to
it
make
was
sure.
great. It was great for me because I learned a lot of stuff from David. So when I started producing my own, records and stuff from different artists, I remembered that watching him do that. So that, between that and then what, my experiences with Jimmy and Terry doing vocals, I sat next to Prince when he was doing stuff. So I remember all that and the sharpness and
That's a good way to learn.
the pocket of it, make sure it's in, pitch in the pocket, all that.
You tell Janet she was sharp?
Say that again?
Did you tell Janet she was sharp?
Yep. Yes, I would.
I bet you did.
And she was a few times, trust me. So,
Eric, now you had a different, again, you came in from a different side of things. We didn't know each other. I knew Bean.
I didn't meet any of you guys. Jelly Bean was the first that I met.
yeah.
I think you might have been around the warehouse the day that I came in the first time. I remember meeting you and Jerome. Suze, I didn't meet you until probably, I came into the first sessions in July. I didn't meet you until the following October.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
The strings.
Pardon me?
We met. I'm sorry. Can you guys hear me? We did. I met you at the string session.
No, I wasn't at the spring session.
You weren't at that string session?
Nope.
It was after that? When we
I
did
remember. Nope. I met you. I came back. Here was a timeline for me. When I came in July, in fact, it was July 2nd, 85. I did the first sessions with him. We did 4 songs the first afternoon. It was just Susan, Prince, and myself. Bean, you might have popped in. Jerome, I believe, was hanging around.
Yeah.
I had planned to just stick around, spend time with my family, with Alan. About a week later, Prince called Alan to see if I was still in town. And he said, yeah, he is. So he said, bring him in. I came in and we did Nothing Compares to You with the horn on that. There was one evening where I came in and we did Feline with the horn on Feline. And that was the first time that he actually left me alone. He had just done the track that evening. and he said he gave me a couple suggestions of how to approach it, and then he left. So it was just Susan and I until like 3 a.m. And then I jammed with the band one afternoon because the band had been brought in to start rehearsing for the set that they were going to do at the premiere party a couple weeks later for Purple Rain, the premiere party. So I was there one afternoon, and Prince just invited me to jam with him for a half hour or something. And then the next day I went home. And that was the end of my involvement until I think October. I came up. The band, he and his band were in production rehearsals for the upcoming tour, Purple Rain tour. We did one more song. We did the other instrumental, the one that was called Yes. And once again, he had finished the track. Wendy was with him, and I came in late evening. They left, and Susan and I were just the two of us there until about 2 or 3 in the morning working on that. So, it was all incremental. I had, and that's when I met you, Suze. And I remember I was sitting in the warehouse one afternoon playing the piano, and you happened to walk through, and it was the first time that we ever met.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did we say anything to each other? I don't even remember.
We were hanging out in the office with Alan, and I think Gwen might have been there. That was pretty much the sum total of it, because at that point I think I was there for only a week, and then I went home, and as far as I know, that could have been the end of the whole thing, like I say, it was just incremental.
I think
whatever happens next is going to happen next, and if it doesn't happen, hey, I get on with my life.
You got to remember this. This was way before Purple Rain came out.
Well, it was right when Purple Rain was coming out.
Yes, but it was before any kind of success.
Right.
And he really wasn't a star at that point.
No,
we were all just...
all I remember was the expectation about what they were all hoping that might turn into. But I mean, look,
Absolutely.
I mean, you got to understand, from that perspective, here's a guy who at most was selling maybe 1.5 million records, maybe close to 2 at 1999. And all of a sudden he blows up and sells close to 15 million. If Purple Rain had only sold 5 or 6 million, that would have been a huge success for him.
Right.
Yeah.
No one was going to expect it to blow up the way it did.
No.
No.
No, we just did.
Let me just ask. Sorry to interrupt, guys. Let me just ask you for a second, Eric, because I think a lot of people might be interested. Did Prince's style in the studio change when you were working before Purple Rain to after he became a big star? Did you notice that there was a change in his methodology, how he would go about recording things, or was he was just kind of driven by himself, regardless of what was happening?
Process didn't change at all.
I figured, yeah.
And the thing was, and this is a story that a lot of the fans like to talk about. I don't know. Doesn't really mean that much to me. When I first met him, I believe that I came into town the night before the session. I think the session was on a Monday. I flew into town this night before Sunday. And Alan was nervous because he probably felt he had more to gain or lose from this than I did. And I was at the warehouse with my horn ready and just waiting for Prince to come in, having not a clue as to what this was about. All I had asked Alan, I said, is there anything about this music that you think I might like? And Alan said, I think so. Some of what he had heard, he said, sounds like pretty traditional R&B stuff, which might be in your wheelhouse. Now, Alan might have been selling me a bill of goods. I don't know if Alan.
Thank you, Alan.
Walked into the big room where everything was set up. Alan introduced us. First thing Prince said to me was, and I had my horn in my hand ready to go. And Prince said to me, he said, I've got several songs that we could work on. I could give you some cassettes of them if you want to live with them for a couple days and get an idea of, I didn't want that. Because to be absolutely honest with you, I didn't want to have any input or spend any more time on this than what the realization was going to be right then. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to feel that I had ever any responsibility to bring in something preconceived.
Yeah.
Because I said, so I told him, I don't think I was trying to sound cocky or anything. I just said, if that's what you want, fine, but I'm ready to go if you are. So, because basically in my mind, I'm sorry, I said, I don't think this is brain surgery here.
First take is the best take.
This wasn't my first rodeo,
Right.
So, and he kind of smiled at me, and everyone wants to think that, but it set our relationship, that it was like, hey man, whatever you want, but like, I'm here, let's go.
Right.
I mean, that's not how I said it, and he smiled, and 2.5 hours later, we had 4 songs done. So, whatever. And I can tell you exactly what they were. First one was Desire.
Yep.
Then we did High Fashion and Mutiny. And then the instrumental that was eventually called Suzanne's Pajamas. And we took maybe 2 hours, 2.5, I don't know.
So that was you, Susan Rogers, and Prince.
Yeah. Like I say, I think Jelly Bean might have popped in for a minute. And I have a recollection that Jerome was hanging around, because Jerome was always hanging around at that point. Jerome had already become his sidekick.
His sidekick, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, Suzanne. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I had no idea about, what they were going to do. I didn't hear the strings until when I came back up in October that had already been done. I don't know about any of you guys, whatever you guys, I mean, I'm about 5 to 10 years older than anybody else, other than maybe Bean, who's a little bit younger than me. But, I already had a career in music, playing jazz and R&B and funk and stuff for like 15 years. So, I mean, when I heard that Claire Fisher had been, hired to do string arrangements, and I was like puzzled. I said, well, that's going to be interesting. But I mean, it's like, did any of you know who Claire Fisher was? I mean, I did, because I used to play his music. I mean, I'm a jazz guy. Any guy who's playing, you did, Suze.
Susanna, yeah,
I know about him from Rufus.
But I mean, you asked me,
my father and my father were friends. Yeah.
Yeah.
So hold on a minute. Let me.
Claire Fisher, I'm going to say one word, Pensativa.
That's how it happened, Brent, was from my father. That's how your dad got involved, because I had said, Prince and I had been listening to those old Shaka records.
Yeah.
And I'd known about Claire forever, from, just arranging, and my father having him arrange things and just being in the session world. Right. And so I said to, Prince and I were talking one day, and we were, wouldn't it be great if there were strings on this record? That would be, that would be so, whatever we used, whatever the word was, the adjective we used, but it was like, let's get Claire. How are we going to get Claire? I was like, well, my father knows him really well, and that's an in. So one call to my dad. I was like, Pop, is it possible you can call Claire? We're doing this project with Prince, and we want to get strings on it. And that was it. That was like, and your dad got some tapes, and that was it.
Yep.
And got it. But it was like, if we can get Claire on this and do what I think is what I'm hearing, I was telling Prince, what I hear is Claire Fisher's string. I mean, there's no other arranger I hear, because we had been so influenced by those Rufus records. Right. I was like, that's the kind of marriage it needs. It needs that relationship where this, big, warm, melodic.
He wanted movie music. That's what he told me.
Right.
He wants movie music, and that's who he thought could do it.
Brent, what do you recall about? Were you at those sessions? First of all,
I wasn't at any of the sessions, but I was there when my dad was doing all the writing. This was the last project before I actually, became professionally involved in the situation there. When Dad used to do string arrangements for people like, going back to, Santana and Rufus and all those people in the 70s, everybody would send a little cassette tape, and he would have to, he needed a chart to have something visual to look at so he could match up the bar numbers and everything when he was writing out his orchestral arrangements. So he would, kind of sketch out what the band and the singers were doing, and then he would use that. But it wasn't a full transcription. When all of a sudden we got handed the cassette tape for the Parade album, that was a whole album worth of material, and he just gave it to me because he knew I was good at transcribing. He said, "Listen, I want you to do this for the project," and it was at that point that I got involved. What my recollections of the family project was just listening to him come up with the ideas, because I was I was right in the other room working on my either a college term paper or writing out something for a music class. I was a percussion major at Cal State Northridge. And so I was just listening to him put the ideas together, and then talk about what he would want for the instrumentation. Remember, he always picked out a specific instrumentation for each song or each group of songs, whatever we were going to do in the studio that particular day. And that's a practice I followed to this day in my own writing. It's every song needs its own unique instrumentation setup, because that's your palette. So once you hear what the artist has done, that sort of informs your choices as to what kind of a palette you want to create. And then once you've created the palette, then you can go and put together the nuts and bolts of the sonic architecture to really support and bring out the emotion in the music. And so that was just a great experience, listening to the cassette tape that you guys had sent him, and then hearing him play along, on his Fender Rhodes. Mm-hmm. And then he'd stop and write something down, and, a little bit, I would say a little bit akin to, if I had to describe it for somebody who has no contact with other professional musicians, it was a little bit akin to what, if you remember also from another movie that was released around the same time, Amadeus, the process that Mozart supposedly was going through in the film, where he kind of, would play a little bit on the piano, but then he had ideas in his head. And once the ideas were there, then my dad could just sit and it was all pencil on paper. Remember, there was no computer notation back then. So all pencil on paper, for hours at a time. And I remember he used to tell me it would take sometimes up to, depending on the size of the orchestra, if it was a really large orchestra, it'd take him up to an hour just to write in the notes for one bar of the orchestra. And so that's after he already worked out the ideas. So he had a phrase in his head. He knew what he wanted to write. Then it was just a question of sitting down and part by part, and then going to the next phrase, and then the next, and just keep on going.
And the most difficult part about that process is remembering what you have in your head by the time you're finished writing it.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and so, sometimes it would change on the way, but I think he was very much very disciplined, and he trained me to be that way too. So when either of us go into a studio to stand in front of an orchestra, we know what we want. During the writing process, we've hopefully gotten enough information. If there's any input from the artist at all, sometimes there's no input at all. It's here, do what you feel. Those are the only instructions. But sometimes there are things, if you could do this, please, at the bridge, or I hear this, or maybe even somebody's done some string synthesizer parts and they say, can you, work off of this? So whatever the case is, once you get the idea formed in your head, it doesn't go away. At least not for me, and it wasn't that way for my dad. He never had a problem. Once the ideas were formed in his head, and he used to tell me sometimes stuff would come to him in his sleep. He would be dreaming as he was sleeping that he was writing music, and a new idea would pop up, and then he'd wake up in the morning and go and jot it down, and then continue on from there.
Yeah, that's great.
That's incredible. So, I think that changed the face of the record. For me, when I received the first cassette tape from Prince, he sent it back to me after the string sessions. I remember playing that cassette for my brother Billy, who's a bebop head, and he about, fell on the ground when he heard the harmonics that were going over the one chord wonders. It expanded it to a place that I don't think Rufus did it, but this was different. I don't know if you agree with that, but it was unbelievable. And what I want to ask, and I want to bring it back down to David, in the mix, there's a lot of things that happen. One of the brilliant moves, and I want to find out if it was you or Prince or a combination or Suze. I don't know if you were there or not, because I certainly was not there for the mix. Who decided to mute the majority of the rhythm section on a lot of these songs to let that orchestra breathe? Who was in charge of that, David?
Well, it started with River Run Dry, which my brother Bobby wrote. And that was a full band. It was a full rhythm section, and Prince was the one that just pulled everything down. He goes, we don't need that, we don't need that, we don't need that. And he took all the instruments out except for the orchestra. And that sort of set the stage for the further development of that, when a lot of the songs, we started eliminating tracks in the mix, tracks that took hours and hours to do. But he was a big fan of sparsity. Less is more. So we always used to say, less is more.
He was then.
What's that?
He was then.
Yeah.
Fast forward 5 years, and that wasn't the case anymore.
No, well, when he started doing his own engineering, I think things changed quite a bit.
When he got his first 48 track.
Also,
Yeah.
Everything changed.
When his console turned to 48 tracks, he was going to use them all, for sure.
Yeah, he wanted
I had to transcribe them all too. We'd get a 48 track tape. Actually, they'd send us a cassette, and I listened to the cassette, and it was so dense. I called up Prince's assistant, and I said, "Is there any way you guys can just send a slave of the 48 track tape?" And then I would go into the studio and transcribe that track by track. So I'd make sure I'd be accurate and give my dad the kind of detail that he needed to really be able, he used to call it, he likened it to fitting the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle together. So there's part of the puzzle is supplied by the artist, and then my dad would do the other part, and he wants everything to fit together just right. And there's actually a phrase that I wasn't aware of because I didn't, being around my dad, it didn't come up very much. But as I got working, I started doing orchestra managing for other writers and things like that in the late 90s. And as I would get onto these other projects, this phrase of that I'd never heard before started getting used a lot, and it was called happy accidents. So where you write something and then somebody else writes something, and there's not really a lot of attention to detail here. You're just kind of throwing your parts together without really knowing precisely what the other person had done, just sort of mashing it all on top. And if it sounds good, then it's a happy accident. But when it doesn't sound good, then you got to go back and but we never had that. I prefer happy, detailed interactions, right?
Right.
That's the way you get that sound, and that's the way the orchestra is not going to step on anybody's toes, and or vice versa. That those parts are just going to match together like a recipe at a gourmet restaurant or something like that. You just taste it and you say, "Oh man, this is heaven."
There's an interesting on the album. There's an interesting thing that I assume was Prince's idea. At the end of Susanna's Pajamas segues into Desire, right? That's the sequence. At the end of that song, as soon as Susanna's Pajamas ends, it immediately, without a breath, goes into a string line of Claire's to segue into the beginning of Desire. But the arrangement, that's not the arrangement. The string line that Prince used to segue was actually lifted from several minutes into the song of Desire. And I assume that he just heard it
Yeah.
And somewhere along the line said, let's fly that to the beginning and use it as a segue. Because I remember looking at the string charts and I said, well, where is this line at the top? And I said, well, it's not at the top. And then I found it, several minutes into the song. I said, oh, well, that's, those are the interesting things that and I assumed that was Prince that.
Yeah, that was him.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there were times when either somebody would request of Dad to write a prelude or a postlude to the actual song itself, and then there are other times when he just decided to throw it in and see whether they would do it. I mean, that's what I did with Really Love for D'Angelo. I just decided I was going to start with the orchestra first and then bring in his tracks, and fortunately he liked that idea. And I think we have a couple of prelude scores, where it just started out with the orchestra for some of Prince's songs, and then it was always Prince's decision whether he wanted to use it or not. And also that I think he was used to this because we noticed this on Under the Cherry Moon. He had taken sections of orchestral parts, and maybe not even the whole orchestra, just solo the cellos or the low strings, take out 4 or 5 bars, and that became incidental background music for a scene in Under the Cherry Moon, and that was. That gave the musicians union a big headache trying to figure out how do we charge for this. It's not like a residual. It's not like a new use of the music. It's like what are we going to do? So, but it was it was a good headache to have. Yeah. So because it was fun. It was fun seeing all those little parts because Prince was listening. I remember Morris Hayes telling me that he watched Prince in the studio, and he'd just like be pushing up faders and just like checking out one instrument at a time. He wanted to know exactly what was going on, and things would strike him, and I think this is the result.
Let me just say, Brent, your involvement, your father's involvement, David Z., I can't thank you enough for what you did on this record. Before I let you guys go, we have one more guest I want to bring on, and I'm going to show you this. She had to tape this for us, and let me just share my screen, and I'll make sure you can hear this. Hold on a second. Okay, so I'm going to come over here. Can you see that, you guys?
Oh, wow.
Hey, Susan.
Wow.
Hello, everybody.
We're going to break away for a second here so I can tell you about a couple really important items. Number one, we have a brand new highlights page on YouTube. We want you to check it out. It's especially made by our intern, Jake Miller, for people who don't have quite enough time to sit through the entire video podcast. It's a great way to catch up on some great tidbits of information from all of our guests. You're going to have to search for it, I'm afraid, just simply because we need more subscribers on there in order for us to get a custom URL. But it's Music on the Run Highlights. You know what else is on there, you guys? A brand new feature that we've been doing strictly on Fridays. It's called Funk Friday. Got to have a little funk for your weekend. We feature great musicians, some former guests, some future guests, and it's a little 1 to 2 minute vignette of us jamming and funking out. And it's a great way to kick off your weekend. It's called Funk Fridays, every Friday. Check it out. It's on the Music on the Run highlights reel. And of course, you'll find it on Facebook and Instagram as well. All right, let's get back to the interview. Okay, so I'm going to come over here. Can you see that, you guys?
Oh, wow.
Hey, Susan.
Wow.
Hello, everybody. It's Susan Rogers here. I wish I could be with you in real time, but Paul asked me if I'd share a memory or say hello, and so I am. I'm on vacation for the next few days, so that's why I couldn't be with you in real time. Rather than a specific memory, because they were just flashes that I remember, I think back to that time when we worked on Around the World in a Day and the family's first album. And I realized this is all young people in a warehouse getting together to make music. Now, there's a lot of talk these days about folks like Billie Eilish and Lil Nas X and bedroom records, and that's all a good thing. But back in the 80s, we were making bedroom records. We were making warehouse records. The difference between then and now is we were doing these things together. Unfortunately, the pandemic has made that temporarily not possible. So it's fun to listen to the family and remember a time when talented young musicians in a Midwest city, in a warehouse that used to sell tires or machine parts, and those
In the
people
middle
got
of
together
nowhere.
and took well-crafted songs and played them and recorded them and rehearsed them and planned what they would do together as a band. I don't remember any conversations about the Billboard charts. I don't remember conversations about popular trends or commercial necessities that we needed to conform to. I just remember the best of what music making is. People who want to express themselves musically and have the skill and the talent to do it. That's what the family represents. Pure music making by some really talented people. I wish, again, that I could join you all, but I hope you have fun in this conversation, and I hope you listen again to the family's album and continue to follow the careers of these great musicians, because they are some of the finest players I have ever had the privilege of hearing close up and personal, and they have lots more to say. Bye, guys.
Oh, man, how great is that?
That's beautiful.
I got
And
only
with
one
that,
question.
with that, I'm going to...
What? How come she looks the same?
I know.
She did. I
And
know
she
that
did
crazy
35
hair.
years
I
ago.
know.
Like, oh my God, what? She's got a time machine.
Yeah, know it.
Damn.
David, Brent, thank you guys so much for joining us. We love you, and we'll catch up with you another time.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, you guys.
Bye. Yep.
All right, there we go. All right, we got the band back together. Well, that was fun. You know what? That's cool to document that stuff, and great to see David Z and Brent. And so we had a record at this point. Then what happened? Oh, we lost Bean. There's Bean. What was the timeline? Eric, you're my timeline reference. But somebody chime in and tell me what the length of time is. What happened after the record was done? We waited a while to put it out, right?
Record came out. Yeah, I forget the exact date, but it was summer. It was I think June, May or June of '85.
June.
Okay. When it came out.
Yeah.
And we started rehearsals second week of June of '85.
85. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And now we're at a different warehouse.
yes.
The one, yeah, right by the house I just used to
Was
own.
right across from where you used to live, Paul.
Yeah. Susanna, what were you going to say? Because we were having trouble.
Say that right after the Purple Rain tour, and he came home. It was like there was this I think it was late June after the Purple Rain tour, and we went into rehearsals.
Yeah. So we had done the video because we went to California. We did the video Streams of Passion in May.
Right.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of a lag period, but that when his brain was off of Purple Rain, he then could focus.
Yeah, we did. We went out 2 times. We were out there. We did a couple days for the photo shoot.
Yep.
And then we came back. I think the week later to do the video. I think. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, by the way, weren't you the bass player on that? Eric?
Yeah. Well, why not?
Your dance moves were fantastic, by the way.
I got to tell you, I really think because we had come in ostensibly to do the video, and the day that we got in, you, Paul, and Bean, and me were at Sunset Sound recording the track for the song For Love for Jill Jones.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
I think it might have been the only time that, Paul, you ever played on a session with us.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I played the
It really is.
At that point where then he explained to us the basic idea for the video. And he's talking to everybody about what their role is going to be. Now, you got to remember, this was a song that had no horn on it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So finally, I'm sitting there and I'm just kind of, and I'm really wondering, why am I out here at all? And I looked at him, I said, excuse me, boss, yo, Mr. Prince. Actually, maybe at this point, do you recall there's no horn on this? So what am I? And he looked at me, and maybe this is me just making this up. I don't know. But I just remember there was a pause, as if he had completely forgotten the fact that, oh yeah, there's no horn on this. And he looked at me and he said, "You'll play bass." Now, I swear, from my perspective, I think that was the first time he ever even thought of it. You better do something. Okay, you'll play bass. Gee, thanks a lot.
So the record comes out, and then, isn't that when he started filming Under the Cherry Moon? When did that start happening?
Okay, do you recall that we were at a birthday party celebration for him at the Prom Center in
Yes. Yep.
Right?
I remember that, yeah.
The next day, he was off to France.
Wow.
We started getting together the next day. We were on our own for about a week or two before he came back for a week or so, or a couple of weeks or whatever. And that's when he got involved. And we're basically sitting there for a week or whatever. And this is when we were basically putting the band together, all the other musicians that were going to be, Suze, your brother.
Right.
Yeah.
Paul, you brought in Billy Carruthers.
Right.
You remember who the first bass player in the band was going to be?
The cellist. What was his name?
Lisa's brother.
Yes. Can't hear you.
David.
Yes.
David Coleman.
Right.
We were working. The original plan was to have 3 or 4 string players.
Yeah.
Pat Frederick tried out. A local musician here. He tried out.
Yeah. That idea went away within about a week and a half.
Yeah. Yeah. It did.
With all due respect to David, everybody knew, including David, that wasn't going to work.
Oh yeah, David knew right away. He was like, well, "This is not my."
Yeah.
I'm a cello player, and yes, I play bass, but this is not.
Yeah. This is And it was an awkward situation for all of us.
Yeah.
Because Prince just had it in his mind that Dave was going to, all I remember is that Suze, you were the only one that was having any kind of communication with Prince.
Yeah.
I know I wasn't.
No, none of us were. So basically, any direction that we were getting as to how we're supposed to proceed, we were getting from you.
Yeah.
Because he was in Nice at the time doing pre-production for the movie. Actually, I think he was in Nice firing the director. The director, I'm going to direct this. You can go home. That's when
that came a little bit later because
all right.
That came a
anyway. We knew he was going to come back, and we knew that any and everything that we were doing was basically just us whistling in the graveyard because he was going to
change everything when he got back.
And I remember the first day he walked in, and the first thing he did, he didn't even say hi. The first thing he just did, he said, "Okay, Eric, you stand here. Jerome, you, Wally and Brooks, you're over here. Suze, and all, it was the first thing. He's already into it, and that was that.
Yeah.
Do you remember what he said to the keyboard player Billy Carruthers about his string sound?
Yeah, this was the plan is that we were going to get a lot of new keyboards for the band, and we were just rehearsing on what was around.
Right.
And basically, what was around were a bunch of old Oberheims that were trashed, and just to explain, Jonathan was basically going to be the primary keyboard player.
Jonathan Suzanne's brother.
Yeah, Jonathan Melvoin was going to be
just so that people are playing along here
for covering the basic parts as a part of the rhythm section. Billy was hired ostensibly to mimic the strings.
Yeah.
Because here's a guy
and I grew up with Billy, and he was a bebop guy, and he understood those harmonies, how to transcribe that orchestra under his hands. He had taken lessons from my cousin Bobby.
Right. He knocked him down to what we call a keyboard redaction of the string parts. I have his handwritten redaction somewhere.
Can I just tell you a little bit of something what Billy and my brother would do?
What?
And they would get together for the fun of it. This is the kind of brains they both were.
Right.
They would notate the rite of spring.
Oh, there you go.
They would take sheets out, and my brother would take the second cello part. He would take the first viola part, and they would each just sit down, listen to the track, and write it.
Wow.
Nerd City.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Bean, you did that. You and I did that too, didn't we?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I did it with John Coltrane solos.
Right.
Wow.
I mean, but
right.
But the story you're talking about, Paul, is that we were a little interested in how the relationship between Prince and Billy, or Billy Carruthers, because Billy was like, he was a real gun for hire. And he was a young kid who just wanted to play not only bebop but some really avant-garde kind of, he's
some out there stuff.
Yeah. And so he didn't care.
Right.
He said, who's this guy Prince? What the hell? Okay, Mr. Purple Rain. What do I care?
He loved wearing makeup, by the way.
Well, that was another. Yeah, it was another story. So anyway, he's playing these string parts on this old Oberheim. And Billy wasn't a synth guy, so he didn't know anything about how to, and it sounded horrible. And we knew it was, and we knew that sooner or later we're going to get some keyboards in here that are going to have better string sound. So the first or second day that Prince is there, Prince finally had enough of this keyboard sound, so he goes up to Billy and kind of said, "Hey, get out of the way," So Prince starts just turning every freaking knob on this damn thing. Just this, that, and that. And he hits a sound of something, and he looked at Billy and said, Billy Carruthers, and said, "There, that sounds better, doesn't it?" And Billy didn't miss a beat. He looked right at him and said, "Better? Sounds like a swarm of locusts." Prince looked at Billy and gave him a look like,
oh yeah, he gave that face.
Gave him the face.
But from then on, Prince liked Billy.
Yeah.
Okay, so because I want to be good for your time here, and I know you guys probably have a life to go back to here, I do want to talk about when everybody was kind of, the record had come out. There wasn't a lot of promotion going on. There was no signed contract. We had a manager by the name of Dan Brennan. Okay. And there was no contract signed, and there was no motivation for them to make us sign it, I guess, at the time. So long story short, I'm in LA. He's grooming me for something he never told me about. But I'm living at the Oakwood Apartments on Barham Boulevard, acting, singing, dancing lessons. Susanna, I believe you're in France. Bean, I don't remember where you're probably at home. Eric, you might be back in Georgia, right, at that time?
Guys, Did I ever tell you the story about me being at the Warner Brothers convention?
I don't know. No, you better tell. Do tell briefly.
Okay. So we did the gig, the First Avenue gig.
Okay.
And then we all scattered because Prince was now going back, soon after that, going back to actually begin filming for the...
Right. I didn't mention that one gig we played. That's pretty important.
Okay. But anyway, we now were basically scattered because all we knew is that there was supposedly going to be a tour of the Paisley acts, which were going to be Sheila E., us, and Maserati. And that this was supposed to happen sometime in the fall. That was the overall plan. And until we were just scattered until we heard what was going to happen next.
Right.
I went home to actually I went to Pittsburgh for a while and then went down to Atlanta. Now, sure. My brother and I had a very, very close friend. His name was Bob Patton. He had worked for James Brown. He was the guy that kind of was the mentor for Alan when Alan was working for James Brown back in the late 60s, early 70s. Bob lived in Atlanta. He was an extremely close friend of ours, passed away years ago. He was an independent record promoter, the last of a dying breed. And anyway, he would always go to record company conventions, and he had all of the hookups with the major companies. During that period of time, every year in September, Warner Brothers had their national convention at the old Diplomat Hotel in Hollywood, Florida, which is just north of Miami. My parents lived in South Florida in Miami. I had gone down there to spend some time with them. Bob is coming down and he says, and we're closer because he lived in Atlanta also, where I was still living. He said, "You're going to come to the convention?" And I said, "Why on earth am I going to the Warner Brothers convention?" He said, "Don't worry, we'll go because I'm going." So anyway, the two of us end up going to the convention at the Diplomat Hotel in Hollywood, Florida. I don't know what I'm there for. I'm wearing a suit and tie, whatever, just, Sheila was there. Now this is the whole sales staff from Warner Brothers worldwide. Lenny's there, Mo's there, everybody's there. This is their big, confab.
Yeah.
Bob was a real mensch. I mean, he's hooked, he's a guy that can sell straw hats to Eskimos, This is what he did, So he's hooked up. So all of a sudden, I'm at the main table in front having dinner at the big table with Bob, Mo, Lenny, all of these guys. And he introduced me for the first time to Mary Lou Bedeau, who you met, Paul.
Sure. In Australia.
At that time was the vice president of R&B music, marketing, sales, or whatever, reporting directly to Ray Harris, who was, anyway, she's major. And she was the one person at Warner Brothers that had the closest relationship to Prince throughout, his relationship with Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
She was the only one that routinely Prince respected. He said to me once, he said, if everybody in the music business was as cool as Mary Lou Bedeau, the music business could be really cool. That was the nature of her relationship. She would hang out with us. Anyway, it was the first time I met her. All of a sudden, we're in the middle of dinner, and I'm being asked to come up to the podium to speak to the entire Warner Brothers Corporation as a member of Prince's new project, which has been released, and we got a top 10 hit with this song, Screams of Passion. Mary Lou laughed. She said, "You didn't look like somebody who was a member of a group. You were dressed and looked like somebody who was the manager of the group."
Wow.
But so basically I understood that, something, we had a record out and we were, it was like you didn't get a sense from anybody that anybody there really knew
who the hell we were.
What, the album was doing well and we had a top 10 single, but all of a sudden, why am I here?
Yeah.
And I'm only there because of my friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the only fun that I just ended up hanging up with Sheila all night. That was, the only thing that we had fun doing. But it was like, but it gave me an idea, so Paul, all of the issues that you had when you decided to leave, they were all very true and accurate. Nobody was talking to each other, and there was nobody in charge.
Right.
Yeah. Anything that anybody at Warner Brothers was actually doing on our behalf, they were basically doing on their own, because they realized that, there's something here that's worth me working, even though I'm not really getting direct attention from anybody to do this. And that was Mary Lou Bedeau.
Right. So you're going into this, that exact thing about me leaving. And actually, I'm a little nervous about this because I've never asked you guys, especially, on a podcast here, but I decided to leave. There's a lot of stuff that led up to it. I had an opportunity. I was going to go my separate way and leave you guys to whatever was going to happen. I don't think we've ever really publicly talked about that. Where was your guys' head at that point? I mean, how were you feeling once you found out the band was disbanding? And Bean, why don't I start with you?
Well, it was tough for me, man, because, I can say I didn't want you to leave, because I thought if we just hung out and did it for like a year, you could go wherever the hell you wanted. And then second of all, and you guys don't know this, Prince was on me about, trying to convince you to stay.
Oh.
He was on me about it. And,
yeah.
And, I knew I couldn't do nothing about that. I tried, I took Paul, I hung out with you a little bit and stuff. And, and we had a few conversations, all that and stuff.
Yeah.
And so once he realized you were gone, he was furious, and that kind of reflected on me. I'll never forget. I don't know if I ever told you guys that. He was already mad at you about it. And he called me from France and he said, Jelly Bean, he said, I want you to join the revolution. And I said to him, well, Prince, yeah, that's cool. I said, but what are we going to do about the family? He hung the phone up on me.
Ooh.
And that next week, my pay was cut, pretty much.
What? How can you cut it even more than where it was?
He cut it even more. He did. And I had Fred, Fred Moultrie was the accountant.
Yeah, Fred Moultrie.
I got a call from him. Prince can't afford, more, all this stuff.
Prince can't afford that.
Why'd he cut your pay?
But Eric knows. And so it was a tough time for me. I'm not going to. Then that's basically when I joined, Flight Time and joined their staff, and saved my house. Basically saved my living conditions. Because it was a terrible time, man. I'm not going to lie. So, but I understood you're 18-year-old kid. And like Eric said, we had none of us had signed anything. We had a top 10 record, and we weren't signed. I mean, we were the faces, but, we weren't contractually obligated to anything.
Right.
And that's the thing. He, I think he was going on the fact that, I put this together for you guys' benefit, and now it's falling apart. So,
right.
And that's why, Paul, you were punk of the month all around the country when he's in concert.
I have a button that says that somewhere around here. Suzanne, I want to ask you the same question, and because I've always been curious.
Well, I was with him at that, at the time, and when we found out we were in Europe, and it was heartbreaking actually, because we'd had that Screams of Passion had done well,
Mm-hmm.
and we had a possibility of this record actually doing something, and the record was really good. I mean, I felt confident and that we could work this record and that we had something really special with the band.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, I didn't hear from you directly. So Paul, I didn't hear anything. I didn't know what your circumstances were. I didn't know what happened. I just heard that you left and got yourself a record deal. You got yourself a record deal, whatever that meant. But at the time, what it meant to me was you didn't care enough about this project and you needed to take care of yourself only. And so there are so many reasons why you did and why you felt that it was that change needed to happen. I completely get it,
But at the time,
I didn't understand.
of course,
Figure out what would make him want to do that. That's weird. Like that's not even weird. If I felt.
I remember several reasons why he would want it.
Let's hear it.
my position was we had work to do and we had a record to work, and it was working at the time, and then all of a sudden it was screeching halt. So, but then there was another side to this. I was very, very much involved with Prince, and he'd asked me to marry him at this time, right when we found out you had left. And my life had a different trajectory. I had been working with him no matter what we were doing, whether it was with the family or I was doing tracking other songs, but I was also very much involved with him. And we had, we were going to have a life together. So, you know, Cherry Moon was supposed to have me in it as the star of it. And then we are in Paris. And then the next thing I know, I don't want you to be the lead in this film. I want you to be my wife. And things change in such a dramatic way that I lost myself. And I felt like, well, how would I be in this band as his wife? You wouldn't have been. Well, I wouldn't have been.
Yeah.
So, you know, in some respects, this feels as though your leaving was supposed to happen. Because I think he felt, I can't, on some level, maybe even allow this to be as successful as it could be. I would lose something very important to me.
That was already happening.
It was already happening.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
It was happening before. He was there. I mean,
yes,
there was many things going on at the time, but I think that he didn't expect this record to be as good as it was. He didn't expect it to be where it was going to go. And I think you solidified by you leaving the thing he may have wanted from the beginning, which is, I don't want this thing to go anywhere because I'm going to lose her.
Right. Wow.
So,
and of course, I had no idea if any of that was going on at all. And this was
There's
fascinating.
a lot of heavy stuff going on, bro. Trust me.
Well, if the project had continued, it would have continued without you, Suze, in that role. Yeah. Yeah. And
you know, and Sue, since I kind of sensed that at First Avenue, because I remember when we did the one show at First Avenue, you know, he had you in tears for a little bit there. So I remember that. So,
well, he'd asked me to do some things that compromised myself as an artist.
Right. Yeah.
When we were recording the record, he asked of me to be something I absolutely wasn't.
Yeah.
Misunderstood track is a perfect example of that, where he wanted me to sing in a way that's not my vocal style. I knew how to be a background singer. I knew how to mimic perfectly, but to actually embody Elvis Presley and Marilyn Monroe in a vocal and then have that be what he wanted me to be in this band was because that's not my style.
That's
how I express myself.
Right.
I'm a singer. But all the other stuff, I mean, Nothing Compares to You is how I sing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So for me to do to Misunderstood, it was like anathema to the sequence and to the environment of this record. So that was just one example of, like, I think I think he was designing some conflict.
Yeah.
Well, we know that Prince's entire life for him is a movie. And the movie might be a different movie from time to time, but at that point, in regards to everything you're saying, the movie, Suze, that you were in right then with him was Citizen Kane.
Wow. Ooh.
You know, and
Bird in the Gilded Cage is definitely
well, yeah, that could,
good.
Yeah. Look, the project was not going to last. Because first of all, the nature of these projects have a built-in shelf life. I remember, Paul, you telling me that in your conversation with Prince, and you were telling Prince, your concerns, and I believe you said that one of the things you said to him is, no one is the only person that is going to have any control over this is you. and you're off making a movie and you've got other things that you're involved in, and you don't have the ability to be able to control everything that needs to be controlled.
Yeah.
I think you told me that he said, oh, no, I can do that. I did it with the time. Well, no, he didn't do it with the time.
Very good.
The only reason the family began was because he lost control of the time.
The time, exactly.
And the fact
Preach,
that
preach. Yep.
yeah, and the fact that the whole contractual issue between us, as you know, the deal was basically a production deal.
Right. That's
Right.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
my own opinion, and there are pros and cons of this. My own opinion was that it would have been better for everybody, him and us, if the whole nature of what the project was supposed to be was much more honest and upfront. Because basically, we were menudo.
Yeah.
I mean,
Wow, I never really thought of myself like that.
I'm saying from the contractual standpoint, he owns the name,
Yeah.
owns the whole thing.
Yeah.
You reminded me of that about 10 years ago.
Absolutely. And you know something? There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
If you're upfront about it, he comes to us and says, I have a project. This is mine. Everything that happens musically and artistically is going to be my vision. You are in my movie. You are playing the roles. I have hired you and Suze, Paul, to be the co-leads. Eric, this is your role, Bean, Jerome,
Right.
et cetera, et cetera. And this is what I will pay you to do this.
Right.
If you're interested, let me know.
right.
In other words, we should have been signed to an employment agreement.
Right.
From the jump. Yeah. From the
And
get.
so, and that's so interesting you say that, because in my mind, and what I've always said is that he had these really brilliant musicians. How could he possibly just want them for hire? How could, it never occurred to me that he wouldn't allow this band to flourish as the musicians as it was. But in actuality, we were just hired to do this.
Yeah.
He said something in a rehearsal one day where he was frustrated about this, that, or the other. It was just one of his moods. And he said to us, you guys are going to have to be the ones that come up with the next album, you know. Now, with all due respect.
Years later, we did.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I'm thinking at that point, I said, look, I'm not a pop songwriter. I'm just a saxophone player. This music I write is jazz. And said, okay, maybe I don't know anything about your creative abilities, Paul's, yours, Sue's, or anybody. Mm-hmm. All I know is that you're the singers in this band. And I'm thinking, okay, I have no reason to assume or presume that anybody in this band does or does not have an ability to write some music that might have some value. I didn't know that. I did not know that.
You didn't know that.
Yeah. Now, the composers, particularly and writers that Suze, you and Paul have developed into, I doubt that's what you were when you were 19 or 20 years old.
No.
You know, which didn't mean that you didn't have something to offer then. But I'm thinking, but we all knew Prince at that point. Only one of two things was going to happen. If people in the group, any of us, had come up with some music that really did have some value, that wasn't going to be on the next record.
You're saying it wasn't going to be on that record?
Hell no.
No. That wasn't the plan. Well, look,
Prince was just always telling that to pump us up, to want to make us think that we had value in ways that were going to be more than. And once again, there is nothing wrong with the whole idea of what he was trying to do, because it worked.
Right.
I mean, if you look at the product that was coming out of it, and he had the ability to continue to do that at the drop of a hat. But the problem is the perspective.
Let me just add to that, though. I have to stick up for us as a unit a little bit here. Although, just because there was a lot of value, and there was artistic value. The record wouldn't be what it is if it didn't have us as the major players.
No,
because he's sort of the master commander, but you can't run that ship without the proper players in it.
Absolutely.
Right.
He saw the individual value in this and how to take advantage of that.
You know, it wouldn't have sounded that way had David not been, you know, our engineer and producer of that record. But at the same time, you know, Prince had elevated his songwriting for this one because he knew who he was dealing with to convey this musical message of his, right? The family. These players were specific for this record. So I have to feel a little bit, you know, it was only one record, but I do feel that it's an important record to me, not because I wrote it, but because I definitely knew how to add what he was looking for. I knew how to find my individuality within what he was asking me to do. I knew that it was important for me to be an individual on this record. I knew that Paul had his thing. I mean, you can't have a guy like you, Paul, as talented and multifaceted in so many ways and not have brought something so important to this, which you did. And Eric, you can't be this player and get on this record. You can't be that guy and just be an arbitrary sax player coming on, you know, a saxophone player. Let's just hire this guy and have him do, you know, like it just doesn't work. We had something that worked. I don't think he was prepared for it to work as well as it did. Yeah.
Well, I remember asking when after, you know, everything was basically done, and Paul had left, and the week after that, I flew back to Nice to be a part of the video that we were going to do for Song Girls and Boys. Mm-hmm. And the day that I got in, I was at the movie studios in the commissary, sitting at a booth with Prince and Suze. And it had already been pretty much, you know, Alan had basically already said the plan right now is that he's going to expand the Revolution, and he's just going to ask you to join the band. Right. And anyway, but I asked Prince, I said, have you considered just replacing Paul? And he said no. No,
and he said that he actually come to me, Prince, at that time, and I know you had that conversation. He was like, do you want to put this band back together again without Paul? And I said, no.
Yeah.
Not really. Paul to be that guy. Yeah, like that's what this is.
Yeah.
And he was like, agreed.
Okay, so let me sum it up because this could be a 5-hour podcast. Here's what I'm going to do. Bean, you went on to work with Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. Incredible career. Susanna, you went on to write and do so many different things and super successful at everything that you did. Eric Leeds, you went on to join the Revolution and have continued to work. So we all had different careers. I did my solo artist thing. What I'm trying to do is fast forward. We stayed in touch for all these years. Your brother, when the death of your brother, Eric and I remember flying out with you for Jonathan's funeral. So I think one of the byproducts that Prince didn't really understand about this is that we became tight. Even after I split, and I thought for sure that would end everything, but you guys didn't do that to me, which I was amazed and astonished, and it was a learning lesson. It was a life lesson for me. So here we are. We're friends. I've done gigs with Bean, you know, at Bunkers and things like that. Hit and miss with Eric and Susanna. You and I didn't really do a lot of stuff together during that period. Sheila E. calls a reunion of the family for her Little Bunny Foundation. I believe was the first time that we were going to get back together. Am I correct? Yeah. Okay, so we all show up at the Forum, or we show up at the rehearsal hall, and it was unbelievable. And we all looked at each other like 25 years after the fact. It was like, what is happening here? We did the performance. We all looked at each other and went, we have to tour. We were going to put that together, and I think Sheila was trying to put something together. And didn't you find out you were pregnant, Susanna?
I found out I was pregnant shortly thereafter. I was 3 months pregnant when we were.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't know because, us ladies, sometimes we don't know your monthly holiday.
So that seed is planted.
Didn't know.
That seed is planted in more ways than one.
When Questlove asked us a couple years after that to come out and do that Grammy party for him.
That's right.
With Questlove. By the way, he sends his love and wanted to come on the podcast just to give, tell everybody hello and how much you all mean to him. And he was interviewing Sly's Stone today, so he couldn't come on. So, but yes, we did that other reunion, and then we looked at each other and went, we got to do a record. So then we started working on this record, and I hadn't been writing with you, Susanna, and that's who you and I were going to be the main writers. Eric, I remember you telling me something about this reunion. We were all game for it, but you were like, let me hear what the music sounds like, right? I mean, tell me a little bit about that.
Look, I'm on to the next. I mean, love music, but it's like, what do you got? What do you got for me today?
Yeah.
And once again, knowing that you're wonderful musicians, but once again, I had no way or knowing what you would come up with.
Right.
And
nor did you and I, Susanna.
Yeah, and my only comment was, if all it's going to be is just a family album redux, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And neither
and the first couple songs that I heard was like, all right, this is cool. This is it was, once again, it's incremental. But it was, let's see where this continues. And by the time we were, by the time maybe you had 5 or 6 songs, it was like, I was just like really, really just impressed. And I said, I'm gonna, this is cool.
Yeah.
And we had asked Jerome to, I'm sorry, Susanna, go ahead.
No, I was so honored that, that because it was so important that you felt that you could see yourself on it, that you could play on it. And I remember telling you about Gaslight and sending you Gaslight. I think it was Gaslight that you did first, or was it Over the Canyon?
Actually, the first song I think was that I got from Paul was Sanctified.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. But I was like, I'm so happy that, when you did your parts, we were like, oh my God, this is fucking great.
But I mean, it was something that something that either something that is easy for me to do that just really works, but more important than that, sometimes it gives me an opportunity to like say, okay, I can try to come up with something a little different.
So let me just interject this, and we asked Jerome to be a part of fDeluxe at that time, and he decided that he didn't want to do that, which was totally cool. We all were really cool with each other, going, Bean, is this something you want to do? Eric, is this something you want to do? And we were feeling each other out, and you guys said yes, and Jerome decided against it. So if those of you who are watching this, that's why Jerome's not here. This is about the unit that decided to continue on making music. So we love you, Jerome, and you're a huge part of the family. There's no denying that. But back to the writing of that record, Susanna, you and I, you're my sister in more ways than one. I mean, you and I come from musical backgrounds. We have a lot of similarities. I'm hard-headed. Did you know that?
No, I have not. It's for news to me.
You're hard-headed. And, we had our moments. We had our moments on that record, and I'm like, I won't kill her. I'm going to strangle her. And I'm sure you felt the exact same way. Now, for those of you who don't know, I was living in your garage.
Yeah. You felt more that way than I did. You frustrated with me than I felt with you, because I'm so used to people, and when I'm in the studio and writing, And Eric knows about me that I speak in metaphor when I'm writing music, and I speak in a very sort of a synesthetic kind of way. Like, I like more blues, more greens. Can you get this a little cooler? It needs, and you're like, what the fuck kind of language are you speaking?
Where's the baby? I want to love you. And no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, and you just were like, okay, I don't get the way, but you did eventually get it. And when you got it, I think that there was a moment where you and I would look at each other and go like, oh,
whoa. It just took time, and things do take time.
Right. So, right, Eric? I mean, you know that about me.
No, yeah,
and Gaslight is born.
No, look. There's a scene This is how it works between Susan and Paul. There's a scene in an old movie that dates back years called Mr. Blandings Buys a Dream House, starring Cary Grant and Myrna Loy. Young people know who they were, but there's a scene where Myrna Loy, the housewife, they got their new house, and she's got the decorator, and she's telling the decorator, I need this room painted blue, but not an egg blue, a sky blue, everything, just detail. Everything's like that. The orange can't be this orange. It has to be the orange like a pumpkin. The red can't be this red, blah, blah, blah. And the decorator looks at his assistant and says, that room's white, that room's red, that room's orange.
Pretty much.
Yeah. And that's how you finally,
But Bean, how do you think that record turned out, man, for our sophomore? Would you call it a sophomore record, or would you call it the rebirth of?
I would call it something new, because this was all your music.
That's true. What do you think, Bean? What do you think of that record?
I was impressed. I was, when you gave me the tracks and stuff to listen to and different things, I was impressed, man. It just seemed like we just continued from where the first Family record was, and I thought you and Sue did a great job of coming up and getting the essence of what we did 30 years prior. So I was impressed, man.
We definitely kept all that in mind. I mean, we knew that we were coming with a second record from that first record. It was important that we lead with not lead with it, but I do believe that we had to have a line to it. We couldn't just cut the line and just offer this new record that nobody would have any understanding of what we were trying to do. I mean, we specifically sounds with the synthesizers to emulate what we were doing with Claire, although we did have Brent do a few things on it. We couldn't do the whole record orchestrated because it's a lot of money to orchestrate a record like that and have and record it.
Orchestrated that record.
Well, Paul, the first tune you sent me was Lover, and I'm like, it floored me. I was so impressed with that, man. So yeah.
Lover should be released again.
It's a beautiful song. Well, let's talk a little bit. I'm kind of glazing over this because I want to let you go.
Yeah.
What's next? I know you got a little doggy issue. So what's next for the family, you guys? What's next for fDeluxe? I'm asking because I want to know. Now what do we do?
I find it really difficult to write for me. Right now, I've been writing poetry a lot, and like a lot of words and stuff, just because I journal a lot. But this thing's got to get over, and then once that's over, I think that we've got to talk about it. Although it's such a weird time. It's like, Susan said it perfectly. There's such a youth culture in music, and we may not fit into that particular thing. And the older we get, we become further removed from what TikTokers are doing, what social media is about. Like, we will be on the outside of all of it. And it's difficult to sort of find your place, particularly with everything that's going on in the environment. And our industry has just collapsed because of it. And it was collapsed before because music doesn't sell. Music just doesn't sell. Our craft, the tools that we come to the table with, do not sell. So we have to find all this other way of offering the world who we are. And now we're getting to that age where it gets tougher and tougher. It just does. It's so unfortunate in so many ways that our art could get lost here. This could become, a distant past expression of art. And I don't know how we're going to come out of this. It would be so amazing if we could actually write music and have it be heard and have it be a livelihood or have it be something that sustains us creatively. Yeah. Right now, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's tough.
Before I forget, I do want to give some credit where credit is due. And Oliver Lieber was a great producer for us on a few tracks on the AM Static record, and he also produced Sanctified, and he also plays in fDeluxe. Got to give him some love.
Oh, absolutely.
He's a bad man.
He's a really bad man. And then our players everywhere from Nephew Jason, Mario Dawson, Pitar, Brian Zimniak, Bill Brown. Who am I forgetting? Huh?
Charlie Drayton.
Charlie Drayton on the record. Oh, Tom Tucker, who mixed it, of course. I mean, and I'm going to forget people, but
our manager,
Neil Richards. I knew it.
Yeah.
Neil Richards. I got it. He just recently retired from the business. I don't even know if you guys know that.
No, I didn't.
So we need
Neil retired from the business, and he was instrumental in getting us gigs all over the world.
Oh, yeah.
And was our champion and was my champion for years. And we owe him probably the biggest debt of gratitude for everything that he did for us.
We owe a little bit to my brother Alan.
Yes, we do.
Alan was the one when after we did that gig with for Questlove, and we actually then said, is there a market for us to, at that point, basically, is there a market where just we could go out and do a few weeks a gig a year, just playing family stuff? And we asked Alan to kind of look and see if the market existed. And it was Alan basically came back and said, look, the unfortunate reality is that venue owners and promoters, they're too young. They don't know who you guys are unless we remind them. And they said, okay, fine. But the first thing that they all said is, what are they doing now? They got a new record?
Right.
And that was one of the primary incentives
to do a new record
back in the studio that said, okay, if there's anything here to,
And there was, and anyone who saw us or heard it, we're like, okay, they've got some, and we do. I can't say they is this in the past. I mean, there's a burning desire that you hear. You don't hear dead people in that record. You don't hear one.
No, I mean, basically what it comes down to, we are all adults. So by the very nature of what we do, we make adult music, which doesn't mean that younger people can't relate to it. But the unfortunate thing that is Susan's, expressed so accurately is that the nature of the business has changed so many years that it is extremely difficult to get our music in front of those people that might actually relate to it.
Right.
Yeah.
And the fact that, look, it's like, they're all like me, I don't seek out new music any longer, basically because all the music that I want to listen to, I've got. Yeah, I can listen to younger people make music, and it might be cool, but I mean, from my perspective, I've heard it all before.
Yeah.
So the thing is that so many people that are our age that would probably relate to what they're not seeking music out either. Somehow you got to get in front of them and remind them, hey, there's some people out there that can make music that you can relate to today.
Right.
And that's been the challenge, and it's extraordinarily difficult to be able to do that. Yeah.
So I posed a question to some of the people who sign up for the podcast, and they are all excited, first of all, to see us reminiscing. And second of all, they want to know, are we going to tour? Well, there is no touring now, obviously, but They're wondering if we're touring the 35th anniversary of the record. Will we play it in its entirety?
No. Well,
I don't know. That's a tough. We haven't discussed it, so I don't know.
it's basically up to them.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's almost at the point now, because knowing the economics of it, it's just, you almost got to say, you know, if you want us to come to your city, send us money now.
Right. Send
Money so we can eat in order to live long enough to play the family record line.
Exactly.
Like, you know, pre-sales.
So let me also, before I let you go, because it's called Music on the Run, we talk about fitness and health and how you're staying so good looking, Eric, after all these years.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're a biker, aren't you? That's what you like doing.
I'm a recreational biker. I mean, I've been out for maybe, you know, this summer, maybe 200 miles. You know, I'm a comfort biker.
Got it.
Yeah.
Jelly Bean,
But I like to ride. Yeah.
Jelly Bean, you're a daily biker.
Yeah, 2 to 3 hours a day. Yeah.
That's serious. Yeah. That's great.
Well, you've dropped a lot of weight. I mean, in the last 10 years. Are you on a road bike?
Huh?
Are you on a road bike, or are you on what kind of bike you on?
I just have like a city bike. The first time I lost 100 pounds, man, it was indoors. I was riding indoors for 90 minutes, you know, at my gym. But now in recent years, it's been outside. I like outside better.
Yeah.
You know, I still have a gym membership, but I like riding, you know, the bike paths and different things outside.
So you just go for a ride for 2 hours, and that calms your brain down and all that?
Yeah, well, Paul, I lead a stressful life, man.
I know you do.
You know, there's another band that we won't mention here that I've been through with, man, and I'm still going through it, and so so that bike riding helps me manage that. And then you have a family life. I have kids and stuff like that. So
right,
I just deal with it, you know. And you're constantly chasing the dollar, and now it's even harder now. So it's you know, it's got to do something to keep your sanity. And then we won't even talk about the pandemic and the civil unrest that's going on right now. So
that's a whole nother podcast that we should talk about. And I've been talking to every one of my guests who come on this show, but we're at hour 2 right now. So
I know.
But I'm serious. We should talk about that. Susanna, when you went away, we were just talking a little bit about what Music on the Run is all about, and that's about how you stay healthy and how you've been able to stay as young and beautiful as you are, my dear, all these years.
I am an avid yogi, yogini, as they say.
Yogi.
I've been doing my yoga practice for 25 years.
Yeah. That'll do it. That'll do it.
I'm not perfect at it by any means, but I'm committed to it. So, and the pandemic has forced me to do work that I haven't done because of all the distractions of just being in life and being outside and going from point A to point B. But being home, I have a very specific routine that keeps me at least calmer and more present than had I not had it. So it's important that I have it. I mean, I couldn't have gone through what I went through with my mother's passing of this horrible virus and raising 2 kids on my own, and living in an area that is so. It's so interesting to be in an area that is hostile, and the environment is hostile, and then there's a belief system that's very different than mine. That where I live, it's complicated and it's difficult, and I am, I'm a peaceful warrior at heart, and this whole thing that we're all going through together collectively has put a pause button on how I deal with stuff. So it's a good thing, but it's also, unexpected. But so that's what I do and always have. I've always it's just more now. I mean, I'm in my yoga room now where I spend a lot of times during my day when I'm not doing mommy stuff or regular things that have to keep me throughout my day and work, because I do work as well. But this has helped me dramatically. If I didn't have it, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Although, I'm older. I'm not going to deny it. It is what it is.
You look great. You guys, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to come on. I miss you, and this was good for my soul to see and hear you and talk about, our hang that we've had for the last 35 years.
Yeah, we'll help each other, and we'll be with each other again, and we'll find our way through this somehow, or at least even if we get to play music together. Just playing music is what we do.
Music is healing. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
So, and it's how we're wired.
Absolutely.
You can't ask, who's an architect to go all of a sudden go be a bass player. Like we are musicians and artists. It's what we do. So we have to be able to eventually do that again because it's what we are. But it's just figuring out how do we do that and, keep roofs over our head and put food on the table.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have health insurance for the rest of our fucking lives. Hopefully that we take care of.
Exactly. The struggle is real.
You know what I mean? We have to be healthy and strong for the children. We have to be healthy and strong, hopefully, for our lives, because at this point, we don't know what we have to make sure that our, however long we have, things are going to be okay. It's just all of it is so layered, and, we have to, keep each other close.
And remember to vote.
Vote. Please, preach. Vote.
For the love of God.
Oh, my God. Please.
We're not going there. I love y'all. This is Music on the Run, episode 22 with my real family. I love you all so much. We will see you guys in a couple of weeks. Peace. Music on the Run was hosted by yours truly, St. Paul Peterson. Edited and produced by my buddy Davide Raso. Video editing by Ivan Sebastianov. And a very special thanks to the people who financially support this podcast. And remember, nothing compares to you.